Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hello. I'm almost tempted to have this evening be like a small group at retreat, but I will say a few things. Um, so we just finished retreat here in Costa Rica. Barbara and Danette were there. And it was truly, for me, in my experience, phenomenal. It was a phenomenal retreat. It went deep and it was really remarkable. A lot of glimpses and shifts and willingness to see reality for what it is, true nature for what it is, rather than the overlay of the ego structure. Not that the ego structure is an evil entity. It's just an obscuration that pops in when we believe in separate existence. But these evening gatherings this winter, which is funny to say because it's summer here in Costa Rica and it was so hot today. It was a really hot day, but are dedicated kind of to the heart of being. It was a study course that we all did. I don't know, I can't keep track of the time, but it's on the website. So I thought I would read something from that just to get us kind of going in the direction. Surrendering to what actually is leads to acceptance and discernment, and ultimately compassion. As one moves out of the endless cycle of attachment, aversion, good, bad, judgmental quality of the narrative associative mind, in order to perceive reality as it is, rather than as we would hope it to be, the heart does not dwell in the good-bad world of duality. It dwells in wholeness and discernment. And this leads to compassion that arises spontaneously because we see something for what it is, innocently. If fear is the predominant level of one's consciousness, then one can only behave fearfully. That's understandable. The heart discerns and sees this reality rather than judging it. And therefore the heart moves freely with love and compassion, which then leads to changes in what we see as the other. We change reality by virtue of our level of consciousness, what we are, rather than what we do. So when there's no more belief, assumption, idea, conception of war, there will be no war. Do we see that? Pretty soon nobody will show up for it because it can't be animated, because it doesn't exist. I was speaking with somebody, maybe yesterday, I don't remember, whose idea, I mean, she spent a lot of time in spiritual communities, and beautiful person with a big vision for what she'd like to see on the planet. But there's still this dedication, this devotion to light versus dark. And you know, honestly, all we have to do is walk over to a light switch And we can see that dark does not actually exist. It's just an absence of light. Switch on the switch. Where does it go? What was it? What was it to begin with? Nothing. Non-existent. But it's it's our habit. It's not our nature. It's actually unnatural, but it's a habit. It's an unnatural habit to layer truth, to obscure it with the perceived dualities, the oppositional, positional, beliefs, separateness, and all of that. It's a habit. It doesn't have any reality. But as you know, the spiritual ego can be kind of tricky, kind of crafty, because it can sort of come in the back door with shoulds that seem very noble and good, but are still very assumptive and are in position to an opposite. So the pointer be as is, it seems kind of, I don't know, maybe abstract, maybe too simple. I don't know what it seems like. But it's an opportunity to question into all the shoulds and the idealism, you know, the spiritual idealism, how things should be. It's not that we have to forsake our human heart that can obviously see that some situations are much more preferable, harmonious, integrous, loving than others. But when one just sits down in what actually is, this is what this is. Prior to it should be something different. It shouldn't look this way. Then a kind of a miracle sort of happens. It's beyond the thinking, conceptualizing, dualizing, oppositional way of dividing, where this wholeness comes in and the innocence of, well, if something believes, if somebody is in that much fear and that much denial and that much repression, and the obscurations are this, and this, of course they will behave in a certain way. It's innocent. It's seen for what it is, rather than an evilness, a darkness, an opposition to, you know, oh, the force of light and the force of dark, and they're battling it out right now. And I don't know if I'm making any sense. If we try to understand what I'm attempting to talk about tonight with a this and that mind, It won't happen. It won't happen. We have to switch into discernment, discrimination, insight, knowing with a capital K. And this comes about when we deeply recognize and then begin to unfold as the true nature. The true nature. Judgment is not natural. It's an obscuration. It's like it's a lens, a shadow that we see reality through. Just gonna look at this one more time. The heart discerns and sees reality rather than judging it, and therefore the heart moves freely with love and compassion. I think this is really for the idealized spiritual ego, which we all can kind of, this good person thing, this realized person thing. We can start assuming, and when we assume, we limit reality. When we believe, we limit reality. The heart moves freely. It's free without the limits of the judgment, the belief, the assumptions, the shoulds. And this is very hard to understand we just can't. We can't understand it with the conceptualizing mind. But if we drop to the heart and begin to perceive, operate, how do we want to say it? Move from here. We begin to return to the true nature, the natural human being, like rose being, sky being, orange kitty being, human being. It's not a strategy. It's not a program. It's actual. When the oppositional conceptual judging narrative is removed. And then our spiritual ego will come again in the back door. I'm telling you, vigilance, as Papa G says, vigilance will come in the back door and say, there's somebody doing it right. Somebody's got it. Somebody's being loving. That somebody well, that dissolves. That doesn't make the cut. It doesn't thread the needle. It doesn't survive the end of your world, as Ajya called it, the apocalypse of self-consciousness. No, it doesn't. There's nobody there who is getting it. applying it, doing it. This is all just, heresy to the mind. Of course there's war, of course there's good, of course there's bad, of course there's this, that. So it really takes some grit, some courage to question all of our assumptions. Our assumptions limit the potential and possibility for what is actually real, loving wholeness to express itself. It limits it. Because you see, love without a cause, love that actually just is without opposite, is unconditional. It's unconditional. It gives way. Any way we want to see it, we get to see it. War versus peace. Good versus bad. Light versus dark. All the verses, the world of verse. Force versus force versus force. Eye for an eye for an eye for an eye. Division, 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 division. And we may say personally, well, I'm not. There's different levels of magnitude. When we are in reality and we're unable to sit right down in it as it is, and we layer it up with a bunch of shoulds or woulds or coulds or that is a war. That's the beginning of war. This is wrong. Rather than this is what it is and it's innocent. And the understanding and the compassion and this is not separate. So the mind itself, when caught in, captivated, whatever it is, under the spell of dualism, of this versus that, when it's used as a tool for that, it forms more and more and more and more and more division as the reflection. But when we become still enough to recognize and remember the attribute without attribute, without characteristic, beyond, spontaneous, effortless, clear awareness, and the mind begins to give way as an avenue of that, as an avenue of the clear light, the clear awareness, the effortless, spontaneous presence that is, rather than a tool of dualistic forming, then the reflection, it changes. It changes. So kind of just to, maybe bring this into something a little bit more rubber hitting the road. In any given situation, in any given event, the perception of it is without judgment. It's just raw perception. It's raw until the mind begins to describe it and decide what it is. And then we have a feeling about that. And that feeling then drives more perceptual decision, assumption, belief, ideation. At that moment, we have the capacity to recognize what's happening and sort of step back, question with a lovingness, a heartfeltness, a gentleness towards the process of conceptualization and naming, and just to begin to question it. Even one question has so much power. Whatever your question is that might arise, can I soften? Can I soften? Is there another way of seeing this? The more complexity we can actually perceive, the less reactive we are. To the point where let's entertain the complexity of somehow or another, through the grace of the mystery of the body of existence, here sits an individualized piece of consciousness speaking and perceiving on a tiny little planet in a tiny little galaxy in a universe with the perfect amount of gravity and the perfect amount of 700 trillion cells. We won't be the same person at the end of this call. All of the cells are just turning over, just blowing through. Can we entertain that kind of complexity in any given situation? And how reactive will we be if that's our perspective? Discernment, insight, penetrating, seeing. What's the deepest truth that I can actually know in this situation? I'm in love with the surface reactivity. I don't say that lightly. I'm in love with it. I'm in love. But is that the deepest truth? In the middle of like a tirade of dualism, where does our attention go? I mean, whatever your question is that comes up in a situation that has the potential for some reactivity. Because I think I feel, I sense, my heart says that what we all enjoy is loving wholeness. And there is a strong pull, habituated condition through millennia to narrow down and separate and divide out and then experience from this division. And it's nothing more than a habit. It isn't the actuality, and it isn't the heart's desire, the true nature, the dharma, the divine word. It's a habit of, I mean, I've never said this before, so I don't know where it's a habit of unnaturalness. So if that can be seen each and every, moment, whatever that brings, the uncertainty can be strong and disorienting. We don't know what we're going to meet in a moment. We don't know what conditioning is going to just surface in that spaciousness. We're going along, okay. I'm feeling spacious. I'm feeling, the clear light, the awareness, yeah. And then, whew, we watch the news, or somebody just pisses us off in traffic or whatever it is. See me, love me, love this, love this, love this now. And if we attempt to impose our strategies and defenses, spiritual ideas, all of that on top of that process, idealism, meditation should look a certain way, enlightenment should look a certain way, I should look a certain way, whatever it is, whatever imposition is trying to seat itself on top of the love me, then we struggle and we go to war. We go to war. The good news is that we are what we are, fundamentally, essentially. We can't get away from it, even if we try to hide out for lifetimes in our habits, the habituated consciousness. It doesn't matter. It's the big joke. It, honest to God, does not matter. Other than it, you know, the depth of well-beingness beyond a dividing dualistic view is, well, as Sharon says, what we've always wanted. But we can't escape our actuality, our true nature, our fundamental beingness as love. We see it when we see the birds, and we see the flowers, and we see the mountains, and we see the fresh snow. And now we will see it as this. And then the world will change.